This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It's Wednesday, November 27th, 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me in studio is my son, my co-host, fellow investigator, Joe Hagmann. Together, we are about to present to you 3 hours of unbiased, uncensored news, information, and analysis, answering some questions that we both got via email today. Folks, you're listening to the only show where the news is presented to you in 3D. We look beyond the headlines, the bylines, the fog of disinformation, misinformation, and scantily clad lies to bring you the truth. We broadcast each and every weeknight. For the new listeners, I want to thank, by the way, thank Jenny from Southern California. I want to say hello. Thanks for checking in with us. Also, Matt from Vancouver, British Columbia, working our way east here. I want to say hello to Roger out of Detroit. God bless you, my friend. And Lisa from Southwest Florida. Thanks for checking in with us. You can find us on the internet at HomelandSecurityUS.com. We broadcast from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. We're also simulcast on the Christians United Broadcasting Network. There you can tune us in at the Hagmann and HagmannReport.com. You've got to spell that all out. 2 N's on Hagmann, and spell out the word and. There you can find crystal clear FM quality audio. I want to say hello and thank you so much to our very gracious neighbors to the north. Very important people in my life. And it's Judy and Brian and Kiko from Canada Free Press. CanadaFreePress.com. I want to say hello, a very special warm hello to you folks. And warm it must be because we are in the midst of a blizzard. If you're listening to us live.
I think we live in Antarctica.
Holy cow, we can't even. Looking up,
I just went to the store an hour before showtime.
Yeah.
That's less than a half a mile away. And
it took them an hour.
Yeah. I got back just 2 minutes ago. That's why I was late here. No, it's black ice, and then it's covered up with snow, and then
that's right.
I saw an accident on the way here earlier, and somebody else just saw an accident. So it's bad out there. And
looking out of the studio window here, I can't see a thing.
No, and it's supposed to get worse here. It's storm.
Yep.
The headline on Drudge actually is talking about storms. Storms cause major Thanksgiving travel mess on Wednesday. And they say a major storm with heavy rain, snow, high winds is hitting travelers this Thanksgiving hard on Wednesday in the northeast, with potential ripple effects for flights elsewhere in the nation. It says the timing could not be worse, projecting that 43.4 million travelers during the Thanksgiving holiday weekend are going to be impacted. Most of these are going to be impacted by these storms. Almost half.
Unlike, however, Mr. W, if you're listening as you're traveling south on I-5 right now.
That's in California.
California, that's correct. Unlike, you've got clear sailing, it's my understanding. So just safe travels to you and your son, getting to where you need to go. Kind of a light evening today in terms of mood here in the Hagmann and Hagmann studio. I got a couple of announcements and some house cleaning here that we've got, the housekeeping that we got to take care of first. All right. First thing, and it wasn't until, and Joe can verify this, it wasn't until probably an hour ago. If you're wondering about tomorrow and why we haven't put anything up on the website, that's HomelandSecurityUS.com. It's because I was just really unsure. Joe's going to be traveling or with family tomorrow night.
Traveling in the city.
In the city.
From one family to the in-laws family, and then, which I'm looking forward to both. And I will plan on having so much fun that I'm not going to even be here tomorrow. So.
And he has tomorrow night off with my blessing. However, I will be at the helm tomorrow night. I will be live tomorrow night. And I had to really think about this because there's a couple of issues, a couple of things taking place, and I really wanted to.
He's sleeping on a couch for the next couple of nights.
Well, actually, I usually sleep either on the couch or in the office chair, but no, I'm kidding. But join me if if you will, tomorrow night, regular time. I'll be running the program solo, as Joe enjoys Thanksgiving. But, I realize there's a lot of people. First of all, we have an international audience. And also, there's a lot of people out there that don't have people and don't have family. Spend it with me. Let me help you. Well, just join me. Keep me company. And hopefully tomorrow, and I believe tomorrow I will be able to provide you with some pretty interesting information. I do want to get into the framework, the architecture behind what you're seeing play out here with respect to Iran, what that is really all about. And also, if I can do this, I'd like to talk about the festival of Saturnalia. I don't know how much I can really get into that, but I think it's important for us to talk about that. And if you don't know what that is, that's really the reason, or that's really what we celebrate on December 25th.
Yeah, and that's one day I do plan on being here because as we learn, continually learning about things that are in the Bible, about things that are happening in our world, and seeing behind the veils of secrecy that are there. Christmas is not, in my opinion, and 3 years ago, if you would have said this to me, I would have probably said, "Well, I don't believe this," or I don't care. But I don't think it should be celebrated at all in the manner that it is. And I think it's up to us to change that. And not comply with it's basically, and it's hard to say this. I was thinking about this last night when I was driving home, especially for parents with children, younger children in school, to not celebrate Christmas and have to explain to them why, because they have the whole society set up, that this is a big celebration, like the biggest holiday of the year. But
well, something, and this is not to be judgmental, and I'm not going to do this for any purpose of being judgmental or anything like that, but if you think about Christmas, it wasn't really even celebrated until the 3rd century.
And it's not accurate in any form of the timeline.
Right.
And the way it's celebrated is contrary to what would, in my opinion, what Jesus would have wanted based on his own teachings for us to do. It's a complete opposite. We should be that way every day.
Right, Exactly. And it's not to attack the holiday. It's not to get anyone to change what they're doing. It's just to expose how this all came about. Like I said, if I can be as articulate as some others, I would love to be able to explain that. And I think I can. I think I've taken copious notes and I've done a lot of research on this. So tune in tomorrow night as I keep you company and we keep each other company on Thanksgiving in America. And again, we know that we're talking to an international audience, so it's even better. Now,
and I'll bring my computer with me to make sure that the chat room's open and the studio functions are working before he goes on air. That way, Well, you did all right when.
Yeah. It's
3 weeks ago, a month ago now.
Yeah, I've got to have to be in the right frame of mind, and when I look at the various equipment, I've got to be able to put little labels, which you don't see, or the little tape labels on the things where I put the tape on the buttons and stuff. But anyway, just to help me through the broadcast. But I did all right, I suppose.
Yeah. Did you talk about next Friday?
No, and in fact, we need to do that next Friday. Go ahead.
We're going to have Tom Horn on next Friday with
Fantastic.
Steve. And they're going to be
coming on?
I think that's what you have written down here. That's what you have down here.
Okay,
Steve, Tom.
All right. Well, Tom is going to be doing... Oh, that's right, because both of them have new books coming out.
Correct.
All right. But Tom is going to be taking the lead on this with his new book, which I don't know how these people just write books.
Tom Horn came out with a book, 3 books in the last year. Or 24 hours, maybe, even.
Trust me when I say that, you think, well, I can write a book. Wow. It's really a labor of love, and especially if you need to, or especially when you're talking about matters. It's not a novel, it's information, well-researched information. Anyway.
And then Greg Evenson Wednesday.
Yes, and Greg Evenson solo Wednesday to discuss to make an announcement that he hasn't made yet. I don't believe anywhere else. We have to firm that up, but I think that's still a go with Greg.
That was a completely different topic matter that he needed to discuss. It's going to be an announcement and explaining what he has been doing with himself, what he has put together, and it's pretty exciting, to tell you the truth. I don't want to say anything else because I don't want to spoil it, but he's making the announcement exclusively here on this show of what it is, and you guys aren't going to want to miss it. That's Wednesday on the 4th.
It's big.
And then once again, Tom Horn Friday. Stan will be back with us on Tuesday.
And speaking of Stan Deo and Holly Deo, if you don't know, of course, Stan and Holly Deo, Holly had created Prudent Places USA, a CD, and also a USB drive. They, of course, offered that labor of love to 10 lucky listeners of the show and visitors to their website. And, of course, we announced those winners on Tuesday. I'll just do it very quickly once again. But for all who have benefited from their information and their giveaways, I certainly would encourage you to send them a special Thanksgiving Day wishing them a happy Thanksgiving. But very quickly, the 10 winners of the Prudent Places USA CD and USB drive: Deborah Lemke from Florida/Wisconsin, Cindy Hillebrenner from Illinois, John Langevin from Shoreview, Minnesota, Donna Stravenow from East Rutherford, New Jersey, Leander Christian from Ellenboro, North Carolina, Sylvia from Brownsville, Texas, Paul Mahon from Texas, James F. Lister from Texas, Mike Fox, Stewart's Draft, Virginia, and Tim Schmoyer from Virginia. So send them an email if you haven't done so already, and let them know that you heard your name on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report and that you're a winner, and provide them with your mailing address. Now, a couple of other things before we get into the real heavy-duty news. Folks, I would encourage everyone listening to this broadcast, you've got roughly, I don't know how many hours here, until midnight Pacific time to take advantage of our sponsors, the American Survival Wholesale White Wednesday sale. This is
this goes on till
midnight,
Eastern.
Well, yep. Doing the math, I believe that's true. 3 a.m. Eastern time, midnight Pacific. You've got until midnight Pacific to take advantage of this White Wednesday sale. Now, folks, I've got to tell you, I've called so many people about this and sent emails about this, because this is one of the biggest sales that I've seen. The deep discounts of products. The reason I'm mentioning this now is because we are in a time when we need to prepare. And if you can do it with saving money, please do so. I mean, please, if you have the money available or allotted, even for Christmas gifts, invest it here. My goodness, some of you're talking about discounts from 30 to 50% off on items that are essential items for your preps. So please take advantage of that sale. I just want to remind everyone you've got just another 7 hours or so to take advantage of this sale. So please do so. That's AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com, and tell them Doug and Joe Hagmann sent you. Now, one other thing, and then we're going to get into the real heavy-duty news. Ordinarily I don't like to talk about family issues, but I got to tell you about this, folks. I've got to tell you about this. If you go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, that's our website, and this is only going to be up until probably the end of this show. On the left-hand column, where it says "Contact Us," click on "Name to send email." There's my name, and then of course there's Joe's name. And then there's a third entry there, and that's the subject of what I'm going to tell you right now.
The title of the third email address looks out of place.
Yes, and it's all in capital letters. Well, here is the story I've got to relate to you. And the women, or even the men who cook for Thanksgiving, whether it's baking or whatever, for the American Thanksgiving holiday, you'll appreciate this. It was yesterday afternoon, and I'm working in my office in my home, and my wife was baking for Thanksgiving. And she's a great cook. I mean, you got to taste her food.
Funny.
I'll tell you, she can bake too. Well, my sister-in-law had come over as well too, and they were baking together. And I'm actually doing a lot of research in my office, and I hear this kind of a shriek, and then this yelling for me to get into the kitchen. Now, again, in my home, I've got an office in my home, and it's separated by a couple of doors. And anyway, so I heard this shriek, and my wife, or actually my sister-in-law, was yelling for me. And I thought, my goodness, I thought the FEMA was coming through the door, or DHS was coming through the front door. I didn't know what to expect. So I go bursting. I mean, like O.J. Simpson through the airport, those old TV commercials, out the...
So it took him out.
I jumped, yeah. Well, I jumped over my German Shepherd, and just raced into the kitchen. There was a fire in the oven. And my wife is not, this does not happen. Well, folks, what she did was she was checking on her apple and pumpkin pie, which she was baking. And wouldn't you know it, when she was checking on it, what did she leave in the oven but an oven mitt? So, as I love her dearly, my wife, but that was just too funny. When the oven mitt burst into flames from the oven, and so I go running out there, and of course they had the actual fire of the oven mitt out by then. But the smoke was just tremendous and set off our smoke alarms and what have you. But I just had to tell you that because she never does that.
There's a further story that goes along with this. I come over to the house yesterday in the afternoon, and I say, I was in the office, and I said, is there a fire? and this was afterwards, well afterwards. Right. I said, it smells like there's a fire, Dad. What's going on? And he was on the phone or something, I forget. And I'm like, do you smell that? Finally I got his attention, and he said, there was 2 fires in the oven today. So, yeah. I thought that was funny. So something else happened that caused a secondary fire in the oven later on in the day.
Correct.
2 in one day.
Well, and it was actually, and I can't blame this on my wife, but it was actually the movement of the pie and some spillage, if you will, that went unseen. It was just a small little bit, but boy, I'll tell you what, it really made the house smell really like fire. And of course, everything's all cleaned up now. But the reason I've got the words oven mitt on the left-hand side under Contact Us, if you want to have some fun, that's her email address. That's my wife's email address. Just send her an email and say, hey, what's for dessert on Thanksgiving? Oven mitt? I don't know. It's just my way of kind of keeping things a little light in the Hagmann household. So if you have the courage, and by the way, she does take it very, and she doesn't know I'm doing this. She does not know I'm doing this, but she's a good sport. So you can just kid around with her. Just click on oven mitt, and you can ask her how the oven mitt pie is coming along. And of course, I'm sure by the number of emails that she gets, she'll be in my office later tonight asking me what I said and how this happened. But you can enjoy that anyway.
We do have some serious news to get into.
Yeah, let's get into some news. Let's get into some serious news right
now. I guess we could. I could probably go the whole hour with the one story we printed out.
Yes.
With other things that are going on with the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and how it is tied to Health and Human Services along with their environmental justice plan.
This is going to affect all of you.
Yeah. About a year ago, there was a plan released. It's EPA Plan 2014. It is the EPA's Environmental Justice Plan from 2014 that they released, Plan EJ 2014. And in this plan, this 189-page PDF. It lists a number of executive orders in justifying why they are going to start implementing these outrageous environmental standards that encroach on the civil rights of not only businesses that might, release materials into the air or, garbage coming. This is so sweeping of a power grab from the EPA that we're talking about the, eminent domain. What else was I reading today? The house inspections, the forced home inspections, business inspections, small businesses. It doesn't matter what kind of business you run. If you have a quote-unquote business, whether it affects the environment or not, you are going to be seeing these EPA regulators from different – they have broken it down into different groups, and then they're going to use different regulators from these different groups to inspect things. So even you, this could affect you, having an office in your house. You're muted. Having an office in your house. Because you have a business in your house, regardless of what, you could make paper, you could, I don't know, read books for a living.
Right.
Because it's a business, these people are going to have new authority and are going to want to, they're going to want to come see your business. They're going to come see your operation. They're going to want to come inside, if your business is in your house. And even if you're not running a business and you own a house, they're going to want to come in your house because they have all these new standards, all these new regulations, and an article on Drudge today lists a few of them. It says, happy holidays from the Obama administration. The EPA is preparing to unleash a deluge of new regulations. Federal agencies are currently working on rolling out hundreds of environmental regulations, including major regulations that would limit emissions from power plants to expand the agency's authority to bodies of water on private property.
Exactly. And ladies and gentlemen, if you don't, this cannot be, there's nothing about this that can be understated if you live in the United States, but even on a global scale, because this is going to, Joe, and you had mentioned this earlier, this is part and parcel to a larger UN agenda, and of course
yes.
Agenda 21 as well.
Listen to the Secretary, or the Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, Lisa Jackson, wrote in the first page, this is the pretty much the opening of this environmental justice plan. It says that this plan, 2014 EJ, builds on the solid foundations that we have established at the EPA to expand the conversation on environmentalism. My first day as administrator, I have traveled the country to meet with diverse communities and listen to their concerns, as I am committed to making environmental justice an essential part of our decision making. This Plan EJ 2014 offers a roadmap that will enable us to better integrate environmental justice and civil rights into our programs, so that they're going to have to integrate, like the President's Brain Initiative and the Commission on Bioethics he established in 2009, where they're going to have to integrate and mediate the line between civil rights and, what was it? I don't have the paper with me. In technology or something along the lines, to the point where it sounds as it is. There's going to be a line that people are going to decide where their use of technology on you crosses a civil rights line. The same thing is being established here under the Environmental Justice Plan. It states, again, that they're going to better integrate environmental justice and civil rights into our policies and daily work. They're going to advance environmental justice, including rulemaking, permitting, compliance, and enforcement, community-based programs with federal agencies. It also establishes milestones to help us meet the needs of overburdened neighborhoods through our decision-making, scientific analysis, and rulemaking. They plan to expand to the future in working on environmentalism and environmental justice from here on out. And they have these plans that are just so intrusive. It is this would be, people talk about this country being invaded by an army like Russia. People say Russia's going to,
we don't need
talks about it, Henry Gruber. This is a federal invasion. I mean, they are using, they have the National Enforcement Initiatives from 2011 to 2013 that are taking action on many different fronts. They have
134 major and minor regulations that will affect everything that we do, just about.
Every population, low-income, tribal, indigenous communities. The Department of Justice is pressing for remedies by overburdened illegal population. They're going to fully integrate environmental justice concerns into the planning of OSHA program strategies and implementing strategies and development remedies and enforcement actions. And this language is as bad as it sounds, because this is what they're going to do. In 2014, the EPA intends to propose standards performance for greenhouse gas emissions for existing and modified power sources. They're also going to expand the definition of waters of the U.S. under the Clean Water Act to include water on private property. The power grab, a massive power grab of private property across the U.S., this could be the largest expansion of the EPA regulatory authority ever, Texas Republican Lamar Smith said. If the draft rule is approved, it would allow the EPA to regulate virtually every body of water in the United States, including private and public lands, ponds, and streams. And that's later in this article. But the 134 major and minor regulations, according to the White House's regulatory agenda, 76 of the EPA's pending regulations originate from the agency's Air and Radiation Office, including carbon dioxide emissions limits on power plants. Now, as this article states, the carbon dioxide limits are a key part of the president's climate agenda. The EPA is to set emission limits that would effectively ban the construction of new coal-fired power plants unless they use carbon to capture the sequestration technology.
You've got to really understand who heads up and who was appointed, selected by Barack Hussein Obama, Barry Soetoro, to understand what's going on here. Lisa Perez Jackson was appointed in 2009. And she crafted these rules, okay? Now, of course, she replaced Stephen Johnson, but she was in power from, or she was headed the EPA from January of 2009 through February of this past year.
Yeah.
But you've got to understand, she was John Corzine's chief of staff.
Yep.
Okay, briefly, although in late 2008.
John Corzine was
right.
The head of MF Global that stole over $1.2 billion from their clients. But
Jackson, the architect of these rules, really is a proponent or a believer or an advocate of, obviously, the green agenda, and of course global warming, fully signing on to that, and also her main objective, and this is being carried out as well by Stephen Johnson, who's taken her place at the EPA. Her main objective here is to throw as many regulations against businesses and individuals as possible to stifle commerce. And this is an attack, of course, on our economy. And we're going to be getting into some economy news. In fact, this economy news will set the stage for us here later, or for tomorrow's broadcast, but we're going to be getting into some economy, or the news about the economy and what's going on with Iran at the top of the hour. I just want to tell you that at the top of the hour, Joe. I've got some news to give to you. Anyway.
We'll get into that.
So,
and give me like 15 more minutes on this, because there's so much that needs to be covered.
We need to look at this.
This plan, that is starting off in 2014, goes along with the President's Climate Action Plan that he released in June of 2013.
By the way, every time you touch your microphone, it blows my headphones off my head.
I'm sorry. I'll move it. Right. They are implementing. Now, this has to do with just about everybody. You have smart meters out there, all the people with smart meters. You have the implementation of energy-saving projects, performance-based contracting for energy savings. Remember how we talked about in Canada, they were able to, the government, meaning they, were able to regulate the temperature of your house. Say your house is cold, you have not sealed up or winterized your house yet, and you live where we do right now. You have your heater constantly running. You want to turn it up to 72? Well, the government can regulate that through their new energy. Yeah.
And this is the vehicle which they use are the smart meters.
Yes.
So just understand how all of this connects. And if you think, well, wait a minute, there are more pressing issues to talk about than this. Well, you look at the bigger picture here. Look, I just really want people to understand, everyone to understand what is taking place here with these EPA regulations. The ultimate effective is to take us out of the game.
Yeah, and you said it right, the UN regulations, because this all has to do with what the UN stated goal is on their planetary declaration, State of the Planet Declaration.
That's right.
And it talks about governing global environmental change. It is not a one country plan here. This is a plan that will be implemented in different ways by different governmental agencies of different countries. Now, they're not all called the EPA. Turkey doesn't have an Environmental Protection Agency. They might have the, whatever they call it. But they have set up and created all these countries, these bureaucracies, and all have their, environmental, agricultural, governmental bodies. And most are corrupt when you think about the third world countries and you think about some of the lower status countries. When I say lower, I mean below the median. And what they are doing here is integrating social change with what they call unacceptable environmental practices. They need an interconnected and interdependent global economy and society. This is in the environmental documents, okay? So this is very important. A global economy and society, which everyone is interconnected and interdependent. And they also say this will make things more stable, facilitate rapid innovation. They will also put rapid changes in crises, such as they were also susceptible. They say we are going to be all susceptible to abrupt and rapid changes and crises, such as global financial meltdowns or volatility of the global food system. They say due to their own regulations and implementations, this is what's going to happen. You're going to be put in a new world order, interdependent. You're going to be interconnected. It's going to be a social change, and it is going to be they're going to be the ones that do this, and they're going to integrate the global economy or global society. Then it will be susceptible to abrupt, rapid crises, economic global meltdowns, and volatile global food system. That does not sound good. Not to mention the home inspections, the forced home inspections, the business inspections, and now the regulations. They're really regulating cow farts, and excuse me for saying that, through their strict methane release standards, the new methane release standards that they have released. They did an integracy methane strategy where they have met with methane digesters in the Department of Agriculture to work with the dairy industry. And this talk, you ever heard this about the cows? It was like a big joke. This is serious. I mean, this is for real.
Yeah, and this is the backdoor control. This is a way of, everyone talks about Obama ruling by executive fiat. Well, this is his way of controlling commerce, not only intrastate and interstate, but international as well. This is the socialism that's, actually, this is the communist really throw out for that will usher in this one world government. And this is paving the way for this. This is to standardize everything all across the world. So what better way to do this? This is not, folks, this is not about having clean water or clean air.
Yeah.
Or it has nothing to do with that.
It's so funny they name it, the Clean Water Act. They name it environmental justice.
Right.
But who needs the term? I don't know. Glenn Beck, I think a year ago, I remember he wouldn't stop talking about environmental justice, and I paid some attention to it. But looking at this, environmental justice and the Clean Water Act. The clean, like you said, it has nothing to do with clean water. Obamacare has nothing to do with health care. The war in Afghanistan has nothing to do with fighting the enemy. Everything we're seeing happening is an illusion, and it is being done in our name with our money.
That is absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. It's And please, folks, don't underestimate the effects that this is going to have beginning in January of 2014. Another a month away here. This is going to cost businesses a lot of money. This is going to put. Remember when Obama said about coal plants? You can. Essentially, it's going to put them out of business. You're going to have invasions, privacy invasions of your homes and businesses. And what is going to be here in America? What is going to be the enforcement arm of this? Well, the EPA. Did you know that an allotment of the ammunition, of course, went to the enforcement arm for the EPA? Now, what do they need bullets and guns for? Well, of course, this is the enforcement part. This is the brown shirts.
Yeah, and to read from this EPA 2014 plan on civil rights, one effort already underway is implementing Administrator Jackson's priority to improve EPA's civil rights program. Complying with EPA's statutory civil rights obligations is a critical part of our efforts to advance environmental justice. Administrator Jackson has made improving EPA's civil rights program a priority. As part of this effort, EPA is pursuing new, long overdue, vigorous, robust, and effective implementations of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and other non-discrimination statutes. The EPA is committed to protecting people from discrimination based on race, color, national origin in programs and activities that receive EPA's financial assistance. In June of 2011, Administrator convened a work group of senior management to access OCR and EPA's overreaching civil rights program. The work group is charged with making recommendations to advance civil rights. The work group will look at revamping Civil Rights Office, pursuing effective, timely response to complaints, and developing proactive compliance guidance and strategies. As the recommendations are adopted, the agency will develop implementation plans to take public comment and finalize their plans as part of the EPA's annual Environmental Justice 2014 plan. So in conclusion, this is going to be implemented. Your civil rights will be violated.
Absolutely.
And if you have a problem with it, you can take it up with their compliance task force and send them a letter, I guess.
Well,
I mean, seriously, this is going to ruin people's lives. Obamacare is cutting hundreds of millions. They project 100 million people off health insurance. Now, I'm going to play a quick audio of something a gentleman by the name of Mark Halpern gave in an interview to Newsmax.
This is an important piece
about death panels.
Yes, we're segueing now into Obamacare. Listen carefully to this.
I think they focused on the death panels, which will be coming. Call them what you will. Rationing is part of it, and I
agree. It's going to be a huge issue, and that's something else about which the president was not fully forthcoming and straightforward.
All right, so you believe that there will be rationing, aka death panels?
It's built into the plan. It's not like a guess or like a judgment. That's going to be part of how costs are controlled.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
but I'll say something else about that issue, which is we do need to do some of that in this country because we can't afford to spend so much on end-of-life care. A very high percentage of our health care spending is for a very small number of people at the last stages of their life. I'm not saying the system shouldn't allow that, but there's too much cost there. Judgments have to be made. We have the society.
Made by who, Mark? Mark, made by who? The government?
By individuals.
But it's not going to be made by individuals. If you say it's included in the health care.
It's not now. It's not now for many people who have insurance. Their insurance companies make those decisions.
But they don't pull. It's very rare that they. In other words, if someone needs a bypass, the insurance company doesn't say put him in a hospice or give him a pill like Tom Daschle told me that he would do.
Sometimes people run up against caps and costs with their insurance that make it impractical to get certain kind of coverage. But don't draw me into a false argument here about what I'm saying. All I'm saying is, as a society, we need to have this discussion in an honest and straightforward way because we can't afford every instance that people would like to have.
And has the president been forthcoming that we need to have that argument?
No, he was not, and Democrats were not when the law passed. But I'll say again, there should have been more scrutiny by all the press, including the conservative press, of the specifics. I'm not saying there was none, but there's going to be a lot of journalism done across the board on this issue coming up, just as there has been now on the issue of whether people with individual plans could keep them. There's going to be a lot of scrutiny. We should start now. It should have started a while ago, but it needs to start now in a serious and substantive way with investigative reporting.
All right. What you heard was Mark Halperin talking about the death panels. And, folks, this is, to say it's incredible.
He said it plainly.
Right.
He said, yes, there are death panels. It's built into the legislation.
Well,
it's not a law.
And here it is, right here. It's the Independent Payment Advisory Board, the IPAB. It's the first agency of the fifth branch of government composed of hand-picked, unelected members. The IPAB will make all important healthcare decisions by authorizing payment or not. So you are turning your life and death, end-of-life decisions or life and death decisions over, not to your doctor, not to not to your family members, but to an advisory board who will decide whether they will pay for whatever care that you want. It's not funded by Congress, and it cannot have its budget reviewed or changed. Think about that. It's away from congressional oversight, this IPAB, the Independent Payment Advisory Board. Its membership cannot be changed by any future president. It can't be repealed by Congress, except for a 6-month window in 2017. Its decisions are not subject to judicial review, and it is not, of course, not authorized by the Constitution. And it therefore, as a result of that, it's therefore immune to constitutional processes. So, folks, those of you, and especially the seniors who are saying, oh, this is great that we're finally going to have affordable health care. You know, and I know, of course, that it's not about health care, but understand this. And if this conversation comes up at the Thanksgiving Day table or with a friend or a neighbor, you can say, well, all of these decisions, death panels, yes, they do exist.
I wouldn't recommend talking about it if people are...
if it comes up,
You remember how when you get together with your wife's family, certain issues were off. You just didn't bring them up. If you have a family like that, I wouldn't bring it up. But
but understand, you can tell them that, look, all of these decisions are being made by an Independent Payment Advisory Board. And folks, you can search this, IPAB, and those 6 issues are all important. They're going to make all the payment decisions, the bottom line payment decisions. It's outside of congressional oversight. The membership on this board, which, by the way, is not, as far as I could tell from my research, the membership on this board is not public. Now, it may be at some point, or when they finalize the membership or the composition of these handpicked, unelected, appointed officials. The membership can't be changed by future presidents. What's this all about? So this is so important. And yes, so all of us who were screaming about death panels, they do exist. And I find it surprising, or not surprising, I find it sad that, but unsurprising that there are so many various websites out there that are saying this is just a fairy tale and it's not going to work like that. Of course this is going to work like that. I
don't know. I have recent car troubles with my wife's car, so you've been letting me use the van, which has satellite radio in it. Now, there are so many channels on that satellite radio. They have the MSNBC channel. They have the Progressive channel, Progressive Today, or I don't know what the name of it is. Then they have Fox News and Political Right or Patriot Radio. And listening to those instead of the local channels like I do when I'm out running around, you should. I was listening to Ed Schultz and Tom Hartman.
Yes. And
the lies. It's just incredible. And Fox News, too. The lies. They all lie, and then they say that what the other people are getting away with is insanity, and it's just this big confusion. If you are invested mentally and I guess mentally in a political system, a political ideology, a politician, and think that this will be a solution, you are in the wrong arena.
Well, it's what we need to do is we need to really in my view, I believe this. We need to not participate. The only way to win, the only way to really to prevail in this issue is not to participate in the Affordable Care Act. If you're unless
you're fighting it, yeah.
I mean, you just can't participate in this. However, we must also really understand and really understand that this is not about affordable care. This is about taking over 1/6 of the economy. Ladies and gentlemen, it was just recently announced, of course, that there's going to be a moratorium, I guess a year delay in rolling out certain things. Do you really think that's going to make a difference? Of course not. The intent here was to drive that portion of our economy, specifically the insurance industry, to bankrupt and to burst the insurance industry, to take them out of the game economically, to cause chaos with 1/6 of our economy. That was the intent, and I have to say, mission accomplished.
I've heard it said that by a caller on a radio show, maybe 3 weeks back, that what they're going to do is say, this is the best I've heard it explained, say they attempted to run Obamacare through the public sector and private sector, the private sector, and it didn't work. So now it's only health insurance will only be given through government. There will be no more private sector health insurance. This is what they're getting rid of. So then, if there's no private sector health insurance, where will you get health care from? Or if there's no private sector health care or insurance, where will you get your health care from? Government health care, government insurance, government facilities.
But again, I would really stipulate that we cannot we cannot participate. If you're a Christian, certainly you can't. It would be against at least my belief system to participate in this Affordable Care Act. I would rather. I would just opt out of everything, and that's exactly what I intend to do. This is my line in the sand. This is my civil disobedience, and sorry, but I'm not going to play. And I will urge every member of my family to do the same.
So you're choosing to die rather than them telling you you're going to die.
I'll make other arrangements, and I know, and I've gotten emails about this. There are Christian. I'm not sure I can't remember offhand what they're called, but there are Christian insurance or groups of Christian people who have come together to. It's like a insurance savings account. Of course, they exist out there. I will look into that. Yeah, and I would urge everyone to do the same. I don't recall offhand what the names are of the Christian groups.
And what I was saying though is that those will not be operable soon. Those groups, they will not be available. And the ownership of the hospitals won't be, you won't have Catholic hospitals anymore. You'll have government hospitals, like the VA, only open for every hospital.
That's correct. One more thing I want to get into before the top of the hour, folks. We kind of touched on this, but really did not get into. I mean, we touched on this last week, I believe, and I think we really need to just go over this again, because I don't think that people are really understanding what happened with the Senate takeover or the rules change in the Senate. It made a little blip on the radar, at least, but most people have the deer in the headlights look about this. If you think about, or if you try to talk with other people about this, and that, of course, is when the rule change with the Senate. They changed the filibuster. I suppose that's how they're framing it, the filibuster rule, from a 5/6 majority to a simple majority. Folks, that is an attempt, or well, not an attempt, an accomplishment to consolidate power, to transfer power to the executive branch of our government. We went over this last week when it happened, but I really want to drive this point home. This is one of those rare occasions, I believe, when we're able to take a look at a historic milestone, a singular event, and identify it as a historic milestone. And this is exactly what this is. It was, if you look back, if you're looking for precedents in history, He was back on November 9th and 10th of 1938, following orders from Hitler, Germany's Nazis. Of course, they made their move against the Jews, removed their masks, and took their attacks to the streets. And under what became the law of the land, they burned the Jews' synagogues and shops and homes. Of course, they rounded up 30,000 Jewish citizens, put them in legally maintained death camps. That was, of course, Kristallnacht. Now, this is America's Kristallnacht, in my view, that the rule change, because what's going to happen is we are going to lose, at the very least, the judiciary of the United States. Obama has already placed numerous appointments to stack the judiciary against us, we the people. And it's interesting, where the majority of these judicial appointments are, they're in the District of Columbia. So if you as a citizen want to fight the government, or file suit against the federal government, or to litigate a case against the federal government, you do it in Washington, D.C. Well, if the deck is already stacked against you and in favor of Obama, well, guess what? You're going to lose. This is exactly their plan. But it's even worse than that, because in addition to the, at blush or at face, the judicial appointments, you're looking at this carrying over into other rule changes. And if you don't think at the moment it doesn't apply to civil or to Supreme Court justices, it will. And of course, we all know what will happen when that happens. The entire Constitution will be, or what's left of it, certainly will be cannon fodder. And I just want to make that clear, that I think we cannot underestimate what the Senate did last week. And I heard on one of the every Sunday morning I visit my father-in-law, and we sit and we watch the news together. And I heard Sarah Palin on the news I think it was Fox News, saying that was the discussion of this was just a mere distraction. Well, for all of the value that Sarah Palin has to people, to conservatives, I suppose, to at least some conservatives, she's way off the mark on this. And so is Rush Limbaugh, in my view, saying that this is not that important, if in fact he did classify it that way, as some emails I've received have told me. So we've got to look at this maneuver by Congress, by this initiative by Harry Reid, to take the Congress to change the rules. And you have to understand, some people will say, well, the rules have been changed before. Yes, post-Watergate around 1975. It wasn't proper then, and it certainly is not proper now. And it wouldn't have been proper if the Republicans had done it 8 years ago, as they threatened to do. The soul of the apathetic American populace is really at stake, and no one is shouting and stomping and jumping up and down and saying, "Hey, wait a minute, you can't do this." We are not going to be able to survive as a republic with these people around biting at our ankles. It's time to turn the tables, and I think that we just have to let everyone know what's going on here. This nuclear option, you might know it as the nuclear option. This is being billed as a procedural change, a rule change that just simply goes against a long-standing tradition. And it was only done for procedural reasons by Obama, who said he promised he wouldn't do it when he was a senator, junior senator, but of course fully endorses it now. But this will be used to hurt us in ways that you cannot even imagine right now. But I guarantee you will. You will.
Absolutely. Very well said. I'm going to end out the top of the hour with a clip from the president today. This is a 1.5-minute clip saying, President Obama saying that we've reined in spending, followed by a clip. And he mentioned something else in here about the Afghanistan war. Then I'm going to go to a 2-minute clip on the Afghanistan war and some developments, and then I'll take us out. But these are very important clips, folks, so pay attention to this.
Part to the Affordable Care Act, healthcare costs are growing at the slowest rate in 50 years. Employer-based healthcare costs are growing at about 1/3 the rate of a decade ago. And that means that if the studios here, your employers, aren't having to spend as much on healthcare, that they can hire more folks and reinvest more in the business and come up with those cool technologies that I don't exactly understand how they work, but were really neat to look at. And by the way, we've done all this while bringing down our deficits. After years of trillion-dollar deficits, we've reined in spending. You would think sometimes, listening to folks in Washington, that we haven't made any progress on that front. We wound down 2 wars. We changed the tax code that was too skewed towards Americans at the expense of the middle class. You add it all up. We've cut our deficits by more than half, and they continue to go down faster than any time since World War II. So, all told, our business has created 7.8 million new jobs over the past 44 months. America's gone farther, recovered faster than most other industrialized nations. But, as Melody said, we got more work to do.
All right, folks. Once again, dinner table conversation for Thanksgiving, and you might have Uncle Ned or Uncle Fred saying, you know what, the deficits are falling at the fastest rate since World War II, and we should be happy because Obama is claiming credit for cutting the deficit in half. While that might be true, one reason it fell so fast is that he increased it so quickly to such stellar heights in the very beginning. And we have to understand that. So what he is taking credit for, it would be like taking a credit card, one of your credit cards, and you going out and buying this tremendous buying spree, and then getting the bill for it the following month, and then saying, you know what, I'm not going to do that. In fact, I'm going to not spend more. I'm not going to do that again in the next month. See, that's what's happening here. This is not something he should be boasting about. You're supposed to boast, for example, when things are getting better, not when they are getting worse more slowly, which is exactly what's happening here. This is not about the debt piling up. This is about the cut in spending, or the reining back of spending that was done intentionally by Obama initially to take us to the brink and then pull us back. So that's what this is all about. It's the lie. It's a lie of the worst kind, and it's a lie because there's a kernel of truth there. However, it's not what you're led to believe.
All right. Now here's Afghanistan. Or you know what? We'll go to the top of the hour break. And when we come back, we'll get into the Afghanistan war. It's been talked about in many news circles, including from the president, that they are winding down the war in Afghanistan. Well, the president, in the security agreement with Afghanistan, keeps U.S. troops in Afghanistan until 2024. 10 more years.
Yeah.
11 more years.
And there's a reason for that. We'll get into that. And if things do work out right, we are going to be joined right after the top of the hour break by a very special guest for a very short period of time. This gentleman is actually traveling and is going to weigh in on a very important topic, that being the Iran issue and also the economy. So if the planets line up, the stars line up and everything, perhaps right after the break we'll have this very special guest who I will introduce at that time. So let's go ahead and we're going to go to the top of the hour break. We're going to be right back, folks, after these messages. Stay with us.
An Afghanistan Air Force, not even an Air Force for the United States to have, but an Air Force for the Afghans, because we can't build roads in Afghanistan or highways. We can only have airplanes as they travel through tribunal areas and hostile territories, and they can only do that via flight because they would be ambushed, or who knows what their reasoning is. But there's something more sinister. I think it is easier drug trafficking route when you have a own military air force to do your deliveries.
And there it is. Afghanistan, folks, is by far the largest grower, the largest exporter of opium in the world today, cultivating 92% of a market share of the global opium trade. You know what this is all about? This is about the fact that the United States military has been specifically tasked with guarding the Afghanistan poppy fields from which opium is derived in order to protect this multi-billion-dollar industry. Who does it enrich? Whose pockets does this line? Well, the CIA, the UK, the MI6, Wall Street, and other groups, including the subcontractors that are working out there. If you look at before 9/11, Afghanistan was not even a world player in growing poppy. They used, they were involved in the poppy trade, but it was not that huge of a market. In poppy, it's used to produce both illegal heroin and pharmaceutical-grade morphine, but the Taliban don't forget, before 9/11, the Taliban were destroying the poppy fields in an effort to rid the country of this scourge. Remember that, folks? But after 9/11, we came in there, and we just tore the Taliban out, which is a good thing, but what do? We facilitated in the reinstatement of the country's poppy industry.
By 12,000 or 1,200% last time I saw?
Well, in 2002, it was by 650% based on the UN drug control program, which don't even get me started there.
And what is the stat? 50% of the drugs are consumed in the United States. So way to go, America.
Yeah.
Keep supplying the poppy plantations in Afghanistan.
Well, let me just say this. Thank God for morphine. On the other hand, the illicit drug trade that Mr. Hardview grappling on as we speak. Welcome. Go ahead.
Are you there, Doug?
Yeah, I'm here. We can hear you.
Sounds to me like we were getting hacked.
We started with you on the line.
Yeah, sound problems.
That happened within seconds, probably 1 minute after you guys said I was coming. They started hacking you. Can you believe that?
I can't. Yes. So you go ahead and.
Unfortunately, you're totally garbled at my end, so I don't know how well you can hear me. But we are obviously being hacked on the blog talk. It seems to me. And I would assume that your listeners are hearing that also, unfortunately. So if necessary, we'll give it a few minutes, let it clear, and try again. I don't know if they're able to hear me at all because it's completely my station.
And I know folks
now,
can hear me.
as you kick your feet up with a remote and cozy up to watch the television today, be warned, your TV could be watching you. Manufacturer LG is investigating claims that its line of smart TVs is collecting data on its customers. A UK-based IT consultant wrote about the discovery and found a corporate video that boasts, quote, LG Smart Ads analyzes users' favorite programs, online behavior, search keywords, and other information to offer relevant ads to target audiences. For example, LG Smart Ad can feature sharp suits to men or alluring cosmetics and fragrances to women. Upon further investigation, the consultant found that this data collection happens even if the user turns that setting off.
Sorry, I got to cut that short. We're going to try something here with our caller. And
we're going to say what we're going to do.
It's going to be an experiment. You guys in the chat, tell me how it sounds.
Yeah. Okay. Now, with that, our intelligence insider is going to set up the stage for tomorrow night as we talk about Iran. And here he is, Mr. RW from the I-5, traveling south in California. Sir, you've got the floor. Go ahead.
Well, just two quick things before we get into the meat here, and that is, number one, I thought it was interesting that within about a minute and a half of you mentioning that I was going to come on with you for a couple minutes, that suddenly the signal was getting degraded again. And, it's awfully convenient. The second thing is the subject matter there with the Afghanistan. The last time that I came on, which was, I think, the first time I came on live with you ever, and my main point was this whole aspect of the Afghan conflict related to the protecting the drug dealing, and that was the context when we had that conversation, and discussing the fact that Pat Tillman had made it clear to people around him that he was going to come back and lead an anti-war effort because he was being used, his patriotism was being used against him and against us to do something other than what he thought he was there to do. And that was why, in many people's opinion, mine included, it was not an accidental death from friendly fire. But that said, I think it's interesting that was the segue that have to come in, and that was totally just a fluke, buying time while we were getting the audio sorted out for me to come on. My concern in talking to your audience is the conversation you and I had earlier in the day, and what I believe is the real story related to this Iranian agreement, and what is the rest of the story, or what we really should have our eyes on as this develops. And it still is directly related to Benghazi and the things that we discussed and that you wrote about in the immediate aftermath of Benghazi. What's really at stake, and what's our greatest risk? What is your listeners and the rest of the world's greatest problem in that region that this agreement makes far worse and brings to a head? You and I discussed that earlier. Concern I have is when we talked, and I asked you earlier, and of course you got the answer right, but for the rest of your listeners, just to think about this for a second, over a year ago, in the immediate aftermath of Benghazi, one of the things that I discussed with numerous parties and tried to point out to you and your listeners through you is that ultimately the greatest danger to we Americans and to our American way of life and our ability, country, as a people, to influence the direction of freedom in the world, of fair play, of mom and apple pie, is directly related to the health and the stability of the dollar. But there's one little teeny caveat that needs to be added to that, and that is that it's not just our dollar. The word really needs to maybe be hyphenated, our petrodollar. Right now, we as a country, somebody who's been damaged with sickness and whose immune system is compromised. And so in this compromised condition, we don't die of immune compromised deficiency or AIDS or something like that. We die of some opportunistic sickness or disease that in that weakened state takes us out. And from a broader perspective, somebody's ultimate goal is to take us out of the picture. They may have multiple options of how that happens. It's just a matter of making sure that one of the ways it does happen. And so with so much at stake from these players, these Illuminatus, in their goal of world domination, they don't necessarily care whether our economy collapses and folds because of health care or a war in Syria that leads to some broader conflict or the collapse of our petrodollar or some combination thereof. They only care that at the end of the game, we're out, a vacuum is created, and they're sucked into power. And so we're sort of in a position of being the fall guy by design. We've been promoted, puffed up, moved to the head of the pack, so that at the exact right moment, the puppeteers who helped to get us in this position can take us out and replace us with their new body, their new power, their new group. Now, concerns that we addressed way back when was that our relationship with Saudi Arabia was what was driving our actions both in Benghazi and up into Syria, because we were doing the Saudis' bidding and Qatar's bidding in trying to run a guerrilla war, running arms up to Syria and to those border areas in Syria to take out Assad. And in the course of that, we were going nose to nose, head to head with Russia and Iran. And in some sense, China. The reason China's in that mix, China's the one that was helping with the missile manufacturing plants in Iran, upgrading and perfecting their missile manufacturing capabilities for the small and intermediate range missiles, and with some of their nuke stuff, etc. But when we didn't follow through in Syria later this year, a few months ago, that really was the icing on the cake. We've been, acting like we're going to go ahead and kill Syria, but we didn't act on demand. Time ago, and the reason is because there wasn't an agreement to follow through within the bottom.
Interesting. All right. So, good. Well, I'll just say this. Go on.
Well, here's the point. Our dollar is backed by oil. Now, a lot of your listeners will say, well, that's not as important as it used to be. A lot of people in the media say, well, that's not as important as it used to be because we got North Dakota, we got Pennsylvania, we're doing fracking. We're almost energy independent right now. In fact, we've started exporting oil. And if we just get that pipeline built, we can supply the world with oil. Well, there's two problems. Number one, yes, they're going to build 20,000 drilling locations in the Dakotas. And that will, over the next many years, that's going to be just a tremendous amount of oil. But we have a short-term squeeze. And once we do get it all drilled out and pumping it to its maximum capacity or something approaching that, where's the pipeline to get it south? We have a choke point that is years from being completed, even if you started it right now. The world can't wait for a few years, freezing to death, for us to get our act together. And the powers that be in other places in the world know that that short-term squeeze is going to define the direction of the politics for the next little while. So you got to look at Saudi Arabia and put yourself in their shoes. What you have in the Mideast this exact second is musical chairs. Starting somewhere in the middle of the summer, we had musical chairs and there was 10 players. And somebody pulled a chair out. And the chair that got pulled out when the music stopped was Qatar. Qatar couldn't find a chair. Qatar was out of the mix. Saudi Arabia kicked them to the curb. Because why? Because they were acting as the facilitator, both by location and personnel, politically, negotiations, which were being led by Jared, Queen of Diamonds, with Iran on Qatar's soil, with Qatar's assistance. And so the Saudis kicked Qatar to the curb. Qatar had been involved during all of the moving of arms up to Syria and in taking out Gaddafi prior to Gaddafi being killed. So they were a big-time player in that shuffle going on in the Mideast, and they're out. So who are the players that were left, the 9? Well, you have Syria, and then you had Iran, who's been supplying and being the pipeline of the arms to Syria, and you had Russia. But directly north of Syria on its northern border, going on in Turkey. When the ambassador went to Benghazi against sound advice, and to the shock and dismay of some of the State Department workers and security workers that were in Benghazi when they saw him show up and he didn't bring a security team with him on short notice just before 9/11, and they had notes on the bulletin boards, be aware of 9/11, everybody keep your head down, stay off the streets. You know, in shows up the ambassador, and the word among them was, we knew it had to be pretty doggone important to be here, or else he wouldn't be here. Just didn't make sense. Well, what's the critical meeting that he does on 9/11? He met with the Turkish consul general. How would you like to have been a fly on the wall for that conversation? What's the subject of the conversation? The subject of the conversation? We'll leave that for now, other than to say that it certainly could only have had something to do with the arms flow up into Turkey, specific types of arms that were extremely disconcerting. And in a more general sense, the change in alliances due to pressure from Putin and the Russians against certain people inside the political infrastructure in Turkey, and the fact that Turkey was beginning to sway going in the direction of Russia and Iran away from NATO and the U.S. interests. And the reason is because their strategic best interests close to home are more closely tied to, aligned with, Russia, its neighbor to the north, and Iran, its neighbor to the east, and Syria, its neighbor to the south, than they are with Egypt, several countries removed, NATO, all the way over the other side of the continent there in Europe, and the U.S. on the other side of the globe. All politics are local, and their local politics were their interests working with us in the West, and so they began leaning, and they're now solidly moving towards a new realignment. And so what you're seeing in this musical chairs is the music's still going right now, but it did stop again, or is going to stop again very, very, very shortly. And when everybody finds a seat, now who's going to be left? There's going to be 8 chairs and some near and observers. But who are those chairs going to be occupied by? Syria, Turkey, Iran, and Russia. The other side of the table, or the other side of the chairs, other group of chairs, the other four, well, we know Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is kissing up to Egypt, paying their bills. They wouldn't be able to make it otherwise. And why is that? What's going on in Egypt? Why does Saudi Arabia need Egypt other than it's a near neighbor? Well, the U.S. and NATO have the troops and the armament to protect Saudi Arabia and Bahrain and Kuwait and the other places there that are all tied in, UAE. But the problem is, we've told everybody, we've telegraphed our action that even though we're saying we're going to be there for 10 years and we're going to have this contract, we're moving the mass of our forces out of there. It'll be a token tripwire presence. It won't be an occupying force presence. And we're telegraphing that our presence will be, minimally power, force, or strength in the region compared to the other countries around there. And even that is probably tenuous because we've already shown how mercurial we are with how we treated our ally for 40 years in Egypt, Mubarak.
Right.
And so Saudi Arabia knows that in order to protect itself, see, Iraq, when Iraq had its war with Iran, Iraq and Iran beat each other's brains in, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of fighters going at it, 1 million deaths in the battlefield in the 10-year war. And neither side actually won. Well, Saudi Arabia doesn't have those kinds of numbers of troops to be able to engage Iran. And Iran has them encircled. From their perspective, Iran has been meticulously, carefully closing off the exits, all roads leading to Saudi Arabia, even with what's going on in Iraq right now. Who's getting leverage into Iraq? Iran. Iranian operatives are getting the upper hand in Iraq. After we went in there and got out Saddam, we did the work that Iran couldn't do in a decade. We did it. Our blood, our guts, our money, and took care of their enemy for them. And they're just going to walk in there and take it for nothing.
Wow.
So now Saudi Arabia is going, we don't have those kinds of numbers, and we can't trust in this ally for our armaments. We can't depend on them to keep us taken care of. So where are they going to go for the numbers on a standing army to do their bidding? They're going to go to Egypt. They're going to buy the numbers with the Egyptian military themselves and enforce that protection there in the region. Even that's not enough, though. Remember, when Syria was happening, the discussions that you and I had, and I told you at the very outset, the problem with running the weapons and the fighters out of Libya up to Syria, up into Turkey and Lebanon and Jordan and into Syria, the problem is that there was never enough weapons and never enough fighters that could be brought in from the Syrian Free Army, from this resistance, this mercenary army that was brought in supposedly for a revolution in Syria. It wasn't a revolution. It was shrinking an attack. It was only minimally, being supported from within, really. I don't care what anybody says. It's just not true. So when all of that materials was brought up out of Libya, plus the other armaments coming out of Saudi Arabia and Qatar and other places, it was still only a tiny percentage of what was necessary to take Assad out of power. The only way to take Assad out of power was you needed the numbers and the massive armaments of NATO and ultimately, really, the U.S. That was the only way you could, but you had to have a pretext to step in and then take action. So if you remember, for example, shortly after Benghazi, there was the mortars, 2 mortar rounds that Assad's people shot, and they accidentally strayed over into Turkey and killed a mother and child. And for that, we got to put an air cap on the borders of Syria, and it'll be a 10-mile no-fire zone. And then that would be expanded to 50 miles, and we said that's what we got to do, and we got to get agreement. And then we blinked because the people were going, what? What are you doing? And while we blinked, the Russians moved in their SA-400 anti-aircraft missiles and made it known they had them in there, and that no-fly zone wasn't going to be happening without some kind of direct conflict with Russia because it's their interest. But had we not, as a public, as your listeners, as other people's listeners in this secondary media, because it wasn't coming from the primary media, raised the clarion call, wait a minute, hold on, what? You're doing what? They'd have pulled it off. But there just wasn't the public support to be able to do that. And they were hesitating because they wanted everybody in on board and in agreement because they were going to work us. So once the SA-400s were in place, then just going in there and starting to enforce an air cap wasn't quite so easy. It wasn't quite doable. And remember, Putin and the Russians were rapid to respond. Why? Because they had an ally with Gaddafi in agreement, and we got them to kind of stand down. We're just going to kind of manage our way through this. And they backed off, and they felt that they got their hands burned by us because we had not dealt squarely with them and had not been truthful with them. And we took out a strategic ally of theirs for arms purchases with Gaddafi. Now, I'm not saying I want to kiss up to the Russians. I'm just saying that that's where they came from. They felt that they got burned, and they got told one thing and something else happened, and so they weren't going to take a chance the second time around. Once burned, twice shy. They weren't going to hesitate at Syria like they did at Libya. And so then when we didn't take action, what happened? The Saudis, who consider Syria the proxy of Iran and a direct threat to them also, felt that we betrayed them. We got them right up to the altar and then didn't show up for the wedding. And so now they're feeling, and even with their best pressures to move in there quickly and do the dirty work that they wanted us to do with our armies, with our men, with our military, because from the very outset, this rebel fighter group was never, ever going to be able to take out Assad. Could never happen. It was going to take our military. We were being set up to do their dirty work, to take care of them in the region. But there is a certain logic to it, because why? Because our economy, our country, our ability to project power into the world is based on their oil. And even though it's their oil, the machine that distributes that oil out into the world, it's called Aramco, Arab American Oil Company. And that alliance between us and them allows us to direct the flow of oil into the world at fair market prices, starting with the cheapest oil to extract and refine, which is the Saudi oil, which has the lowest lift cost in the world, at about $1 a barrel. Now, when we get oil up in the Dakotas and up in Pennsylvania and some of these other places fracking, or when you go up into Canada and get the tar sands, our cost to extract that oil runs about $80 a barrel, times what it costs to pull it out of the ground in Saudi Arabia. not 80%, not 8 times, 80 times.
Wow.
So when you take that oil and you move it out into the world and direct its flow, you can be a kingmaker. You can make a country's economy very prosperous or not prosperous. Why? Because the world runs on energy. The civilized world, and the more civilization, the more civilized it is, the more things going on, the more buildings to be heated, cars to be driven, things to be made, equipment and tractors to run, the more oil it's going to use. You can talk solar power, nuclear power, everything, but at the end of the day, and for as far out in the future as we can see for the time being, oil is what runs those pieces of equipment. You're not gonna be able to do it with corn and the other stuff. You can supplement the market. You can do it in some smaller specific locations that have other, local situations that may help them, say in Brazil and other places. But when you look at the big picture, it's not happening. It's somebody's pipe dream. For the moment and for the near future, at least the next 20 to 25 years, and probably more like 50, you're looking at oil. 80 times more for us to produce oil than it does for the Saudis. And if the Saudis decide to kiss up to somebody else, they can help those people be highly competitive in whatever they do compared to us. Even though we have the energy and we can do it, we're going to be, fighting ourselves somewhat. And so who else is looking for a seat in this musical chairs that's coming up right now, that's happening this second when the music stops? China. China has been assisting Iran. China has been in that camp. And China's been working with Russia to put in gas pipeline out to the coast and to move some of that into liquefied natural gas for transport out in the world and sale and for use by China. But they are doing all of those agreements with one eye fully open. They're not dropping their guard at all. And the Saudis and the Chinese, ever since Syria finally didn't happen 2 months ago, have been totally engaged in this change, this reorganization, this realignment that's going on right now. The Saudi intelligence chief went up to Europe and met with all the key players and let them know, all the NATO partners, here's what's happening. And you can either be on board with us or you can be on board with the other guys, meaning the U.S. and anybody that doesn't climb on board with them with where they're going. And they've talked with China, and China sees that their interests, if they stay with Iran or push that too hard, all of those solutions tend to be pretty land-based, pipeline-based. Russia's going to hold the strings there. And China would be ultimately at the whim and will of Russia, just like Europe is. Russia keeps cutting off gas in their pipelines and changing deals and trying to leverage the politics into Europe with their oil and gas, which is why this is intelligent. That's why they have that stuff. Well, they'd be leveraging China, too. China and Russia have classically been at each other's throats off and on for 100 years, or more. So China sees that they have this strong and getting stronger by the hour Navy. They have the ability to field hundreds of millions of men. Exactly what Saudi Arabia needs. It's their enemy. They brought us to the dance is the way they see it, and now we're going over and dancing with somebody else. In fact, their direct competitor enemy. And so they realize that unless they want to be out of the game, they got to find a new best buddy, a new moneyed partner, a new partner with the arms and the men to protect their interests. Because on a global scale, what we're really talking about here is the mob. Families at war with each other. And we, America, has been acting like the policemen over there. Only thing is, this is like some areas of Detroit. In their mind, we're going to show up in force after the damage is done, and they're going to get assisted by the U.S. with an autopsy. They're going to be dead. That's the police assistance we're going to provide. We'll show up after it's done, after we've hand-wrung and decided what's going to happen next. This next one's not going to take months to suddenly erupt in our Congress and everybody else decide to intervene. So in their mind, they need to align with China. China has the Navy to come in and protect their interests. China has the arms and the men. And here's where Iran comes in. What is this agreement really do that's like the shiv in the side, the coup de grace to our alignment with Saudi Arabia, belly of the United States is its economy and our susceptibility to any attack on the petrodollar. The petrodollar being OPEC controlled and OPEC being controlled primarily by Saudi Arabia. So in this Iran agreement, Iran behind the scenes agreed not to trade the oil that they're going to get allowed to trade for anything other than dollars, to make gold-backed currencies part of that trading for them. We'll go back to Saddam, Gulf War I and II. Gulf War I and II, what wasn't said in the conversation? Saddam was saying to OPEC, let's trade oil based on the value of a basket full of currencies from the countries that are buying from us, not just in dollars. Had Saddam gotten OPEC to go to a basket of currencies, our dollar would be, like junk bonds today. Your gas would be $100 a gallon. We went in there and we kept everybody in line. Iran could, or somebody else could say, the dollar just isn't worth as much. I think you guys are sending it out too far. We don't trust you. Can't get anything we want with it because you won't let us buy armament. So we're going to go to somebody else who'll take care of it. And by the way, it's gold-backed. If it's gold-backed, then we're only going to trade in gold-backed currencies because we want something that has real value. China has the largest gold reserves in the world, second only to who? Russia. China produces more gold than anybody else on the planet right now and has been for several years, and they don't sell any of it outside the country. Building up reserves to the moon. Same thing with Russia. On a dime, they can say our currency's gold-backed. Look at Australia. Australia switched over from dollars to the yuan several months ago, and it hit some people's radar, but not everybody's. So what's going on there? They see which way the tide's going. So with what just happened, Saudi Arabia knows that they have gotten short shrift from us, can't rely on us. China, who's a strategic competitor to us, has interests in the South China Sea. They think this next century is their century. Probably very few people outside of maybe your listeners who watch this stuff saw what just happened in the Kuril Islands there in the China Sea just in the last week. China went out and took several islands and said these are ours. They were in dispute. What are you going to do about it? You know, it starts World War III. The U.S. hasn't done anything so far, and they probably won't other than stomp their feet and make big noises. What are they doing? They're projecting power. Exactly what we aren't and what we just showed we weren't going to do in Syria. And we're not, as far as the Israelis are concerned, protecting them and taking action to protect them from Iran. We Egypt. Gaddafi was trying to play nice and working with us and providing intelligence to us and everything. We stabbed him in the back. Saudi Arabia is looking at all that and going, yeah, we need to rethink this. And this guy that came over and did the bend over and kissed up to us, you know what they're going to do to him? They're going to say, yeah, come on over and do that bend over thing again. Oh, here, hey, you know what? Here, turn around. Okay, now bend over. They're going to slap us in the butt so hard, we're going to be able to see Russia from freaking Alaska, eyeball to eyeball, in Washington, D.C. They are on a mission to find a seat in this musical chairs when the music stops and not to be the next Gaddafi Mubarak. So the 8 players in this musical chairs right now today are Syria, Iran, and Russia, which, by the way, for those of you that are looking at Scripture, I believe the bear comes down to take a spoil at Jerusalem with 3 ribs in its mouth. Could be them. But then we have, talk about a misfit of players. Who'd have ever guessed? Even 6 months ago, who could have guessed this? China, Egypt, and Israel. And who's the odd man out? Us. We won't get a seat at the table working with Israel, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and China. And we won't get a seat at the table working with Syria, Turkey, Iran, or Russia. We're odd man out. Doesn't mean that we won't have interest at stake, and it doesn't mean that we won't get damaged in this. It means that in the shuffle for a chair, we're probably going to end up on the floor. And our dollar going to be the main victim.
But by design.
By design. But now, what we have to think about, and this might be conversation for you folks tomorrow, and I want your people to think about this. End game. See, most of the people listening right now, I'm concerned, would think only as far as the conflict that would come. Because probably what's going to happen, we're forcing Saudi Arabia into the hands of China. We're forcing Saudi Arabia to find a new suitor because of our inaction. When that happens, and these forces line up against each other, Israel is not going to wait till cities are destroyed before they take action, and probably will have to act first. And when they do, they'll probably have to do it nuclear because they haven't got the forces, the men, or the equipment to do it any other way. They'll only have one option. If they feel truly threatened, they'll do it with nukes. And when they do that, they become a stumbling block to the world. They'll be the pariah of the world. And their allies, the people that were working with them through their proxies, ultimately the Saudis. And in the course of that, what then happens? How does this play into the big picture, which we talk about from time to time? You got to think bigger. What is the end game? The end game is that these Illuminatus, these one-worlders, need all 3 sides to beat each other's brains in so that they walk in or get sucked into power, not having to fight it out with us to take over the world, but to walk into the vacuum that's created after we beat all each other's brains in, and somebody's got to put it back together again and make it work. order back, and their order, their New World Order, is their new monetary system, their new international leadership that they've been dreaming about for thousands of years, the culmination of all their hopes and dreams. And what we're doing is throwing monkey wrenches into the works, slowing that down, impeding it. And I might add, for those people that think it's fait accompli and they win and we're just going to have to go along with it, you got to read the scriptures a little more fully. They don't win. And even in the course of that, those that are faithful and true will oppose. Even though we go through horrible things on the way, we will oppose those agents of darkness and their objectives. And in the end, they don't get a permanent New World Order. It does get overturned, no matter how hard they try. And that's what I hope your people keep in mind. Keep your eye on the prize. But they don't get there by just sitting on the sidelines waiting to be beamed out and, watching, wow, that was a big splash. No, they get there because we oppose it. We stand, we occupy. We're the occupying army. God didn't create an army of believers just to beam them out at the most important, crucial moment in the history of mankind. That seed of Adam is there as an occupying army. They can't take over any more than a bunch of freedom fighters, ragtag team, could take over a well-established regime in Syria, even if they were on their heels. We're the occupying army. We don't let it happen. It won't be without some bumps and bruises and some tough times, but we're in the fray, and we're not just gonna roll over and let it be done on our call, on our watch, with our resources, with our grandchildren. And that's what you got to understand.
Very well said. Thank you very much. What a tremendous, cogent, articulate summation of what's going on. I just want to say thank you so much for that. Wow. The bigger picture, indeed, here.
Thanks, Doug.
Hey.
And I get all of your listeners, while these things are upsetting and they're troubling to all of us, and we do have concerns. The other side of the coin is we need to savor these moments, this day, this weekend, and enjoy what we do have. Because when you're in battle, when you go off to a far-off place to fight a battle, or even as a police officer close to home, the reasons that you do it, the reasons you get into the fray, just like Tillman did, God, country, mom, apple pie. When you have those days, that's what guys remember in the heat of battle. That's what they're there for. Savor this day, this weekend. Enjoy it to the hilt. It will give you the strength for the battle ahead to see through to the other side. Somebody's got to survive this, because those people that hold on and persevere through, they're the ones that are going to rebuild after the dust settles. We're not going to avoid this fight. We're too far down the path. These guys have got serious beachhead on us, and we're not going to not have a fight here. But they're not guaranteed a victory, and neither are we if we don't engage. And part of the strength to engage and to stay focused is to realize all that family around you, all that infrastructure, the road you get to drive on, that your society somehow maintains because it still works to get to grandma's house. All of that is worth fighting for. And even if the fight is just to say no, and hell no, just like we did in Syria. 1 million people are breathing on this earth today their way in Syria 12 months ago. Think about that. This is not wasted effort, wasted breath, wasted time. Occupy. Occupy until I return. That was the orders. I'm staying with the orders. Love all your listeners. Appreciate you. You're a great ally, a great friend, and thanks for letting me have a moment with your audience. Good night, Doug.
God bless you, my friend. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm blown away by that. We're late for the top of the hour break. This is the 27th day of November, 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann, co-host. The Hagmann Report. With me is Joe Hagmann. Together, folks, to the third and final hour of the Hagmann Report. I just got to say, listeners on the Christians United Broadcasting Network heard the intelligence insider, the information pretty clear. I would suggest if you didn't hear that, if there were sound problems, please download the archive from our YouTube channel or from Christians United Broadcasting. Fantastic summation, very articulate assessment of what's taking place over in the Middle East, the power realignment. We'll get into that tomorrow. A couple of things as we come back. Folks, apparently in case you misunderstood, Tom Horn will be on the 6th. It's next Friday, not this Friday, next Friday. I'm getting a couple of emails saying, that it was miannounced. Well, I'm not sure how that happens. Okay, so anyway, it's going to be on the 6th. We're going to start using dates from now on. So December 6th is the date for Tom Horn. I also want to say, got a great email from TJ in the Philippines. Thank you so much for that. We thank you for listening in the Philippines and wish you a great day. Happy Thanksgiving from us here in the States. God bless you for being there. Additionally, I received a note here that somebody had questions concerning what I was talking about, White Wednesday as opposed to Black Friday. Well, White Wednesday is the sale that's our sponsor, American Survival Wholesale, they have for the next, for the next 6 hours, I believe, or 5 hours, until 12 Pacific time. That's until midnight Pacific time tonight. Much of their stock is deeply discounted, a sale like no other. Folks, as soon as the show is over, or even during the show, definitely visit American Survival Wholesale. If there was ever a time to purchase any type of preps, now is the time. Take advantage of this absolutely incredible, deeply discounted sale of merchandise from American Survival Wholesale. Top quality. I'm going to tell you something. I know right after the show, I'll be grabbing or putting an order in for my Christmas list. So just folks, definitely, AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com. Tell them the Hagmann and Hagmann Report sent you. And also, we'll be taking calls for the rest of the show tonight, 661-244-9839. That's 661-244-9839.
All right. Unmute myself. And that was a great call by the insider. Lots of important information in there. Really, it's such a good, comprehensive breakdown of what's going on in the situation. Nobody talks about that on any news stream, really, from radio to TV, mainstream to alternative, and gets that in depth. And I thought that was really, really well said. And
if I were to tell you where this gentleman is headed to, you wouldn't believe it. And if I were to tell you who the information that he provided, the value of that information, it is extremely valuable. You just wouldn't believe it. I just got to tell you, You heard something, and we spoke for a long time earlier today about this very topic. And once he explained it, the way he explained it, it all made sense to me. You have to look at the bigger picture, and it is indeed just at 3 levels.
With that, we're going to go to the phones. 281, we're coming to you first. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. What's on your mind tonight? 281, you're live on the air. All right. Well, we could hear what was going on over there. 562, you're up next, live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. 562.
I think we hear a turn signal. Hi.
Yeah, I don't think that was a hi. Okay. 704, third time's a charm. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. 704?
Is that me?
That is you.
Oh, I was just listening in.
Okay, very well. Yeah, 661-244-9839. Go ahead and press the number 1 button on the dial pad to talk if you want to get on the air. Now's a good time to try.
Yeah, we're going to go to, I think this is Pasadena 916. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. How are you doing tonight?
Hey, Joe, Doug, it's Lars, firefighter shofar blower.
Hey, great to have you. Yeah, great to have you on. Hey. What's up?
Hey, I'm sitting in Yosemite in a little tent cabin, and I just came up here to pray, and I just asked God in the name of Jesus that you would touch Joe and Doug and their families, Father God, and I just ask your abundance of your Holy Spirit would increase from the crown of their heads to the soles of their feet, and we give you all the praise and glory. You know, guys, Lord took me to Lamentations, and Joe, let's see here, Lamentations 2, and I found it very interesting. Verse 1 and verse 22 that really ministered to me about God's divine protection. Lamentations 2, I'm going to read verses 1, and then Joe 1 to read verse 22. So verse 1 says, "How has the Lord covered the daughter Zion with a cloud in his anger, and cast down from heaven unto the earth the beauty of Israel, and remembered not his footstool in the day of his anger?" And then read verse 22.
Give me a second. I'm still trying to find it here.
Oh, it's just before Ezekiel, right after Jeremiah.
Yeah. And 221, you said, or 222?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
222. And it says, "Thou hast called in thy solemn day my terrors round about, so that in the day of the Lord's anger none escaped nor remained, those that I have swaddled, and I brought up hath mine enemy consumed."
Okay, the swaddled, when Christ was in the manger, he was swaddled in a cloud. So what Yahweh's been showing me is that part of his divine protection is right there with the swaddle. It says, "Those that I have swaddled and brought up have my enemies consumed." So as that last person that was speaking about occupying, I just want to encourage the listeners to stay, abide by his word, and stay in his cloud, and be swaddled by the Lord. So you guys just keep being used as instruments of inflicting damage to the liar, the father of lies, and we rebuke him in Jesus' name. And we thank you for divine protection, Father Yahweh, and we thank you for the increase in this ministry in Jesus' name. Have a good night.
In Jesus' name. If you want to, you have your shofar, go ahead and give us a toot there.
Oh, amen. Let me get my shofar. It's right here. Yes, Lord. All right. Thank you, Yahweh.
Fantastic.
Hallelujah.
God bless you guys. Thank you so much. I didn't mean to sound disrespectful by saying give us a toot. I didn't. Please, folks, I didn't mean to sound disrespectful by that. Yeah. But by the way, got an email here. Dr. Paul Williams, a great friend. By the way, I met Dr. Williams in Toronto, Ontario, a number of years back. We were working on an investigation up there in advance of his book, The Day of Islam. In fact, he had used some of my investigative material for that book, and he writes back in 2009, don't pick the poppies, because that's the order from the Obama administration to the 4,000, or that was the order to the 4,000 Marines that were engaged in Operation Khanjar, or Strike the Sword, an invasion of the Taliban infested Helmand province in southern Afghanistan. The Marines of Bravo Company, 1st Platoon, sleep beside groves of poppies, and the troops of the 2nd Platoon walk through the fields on strict orders not to swat the heavy opium bulbs. Folks, this is, as the interview before, this is what we're fighting, or what we're in Afghanistan for, is to police the poppy fields. And once again, in 2008, Afghanistan grew 93% of the world's poppy crop, with Helmand province alone responsible for more than half of the opium production in the country. So, as it turns out, heroin represents the only staple of the Afghan economy. That's what we're building up. Is that what our men and women and your children and your parents and your sons, daughters, sisters, and brothers are dying for? Again, 661-244-9839. You want to weigh in? Anytime.
We'll take some more calls here. I'm going to hit a piece of news. Embracing Big Brother. How facial recognition could help fight crime. From fighting terrorism to processing payments in the bank, or in the blink of an eye, facial recognition is set up to change our ideas on privacy. A number of exciting developments in the field could even push its toughest critics to reconsider. This from CNN. The more people get out of it, the more they'll surrender to it, says Mr. Alamalgo, Senior Vice President for the Digital TPN Incorporation. He believes that people will only embrace the technology if benefits outweigh the privacy concerns. Facial recognition is a computer-based system that automatically identifies a person based on a digital image or video source, which is then matched to information stored in a database. Facial recognition is a key part of the agency's ambition in the $1 billion next-generation identification system, a state-of-the-art biometric identification system that also includes iris scans, DNA analysis, and voice identification. The mission is to reduce terrorist and criminal activity by improving and expanding biometric identification as well as criminal history information services. Now, did you take all that in? The $1 billion next-generation ID system will help fight and reduce terrorism and crime activity? A doctor out of the UK, Mr. Solomon, explains a key advantage here is that it allows people to respond to faces that they see rather than having to break it down into component parts. Other people have commented, this from the UK, to in an interview with the former head of the Electronic Privacy Information Center in Washington, D.C. This is our goal is to facilitate tagging so people know when there are photos of them on our service. Facebook is joining and introducing controversial features that will automatically identify faces and upload photos by comparing them to other tagged pictures. This is a huge privacy concern.
Well, this is truly 1984 coming to us in spades, and you go to. Here's how it affects you. If you're, it's insidious, and this is globally. This is not just the United States. There are different levels of preparedness on a global level. You walk into a store, for example, shoppers automatically recognized. There's a program called Face Deals where the camera uses photos uploaded. Remember that last photograph that you uploaded to Facebook, ladies and gentlemen? Remember that? And you thought, oh, well, it's just for my friends and family to look at, or it's just an innocuous photograph of me on Facebook. Well, did you know that Facebook, and of course you did, and they opened their doors, their virtual doors, to the NSA and the NRO and other government agencies, as well as the FBI and CIA, to allow facial recognition, matching names with people. So that's through a program called Face Deals, where the cameras, the systems use photographs uploaded to Facebook to recognize people as they walk into stores. And as you walk down the street, this program may not have gotten as far as it has without Facebook and without your cooperation. Think about that.
Yeah, one other piece of news before we go back to phone calls. Defense Department gives local police equipment designated for a war zone. From war zones to city streets, some military vehicles are getting a new life, and not everyone is happy about the recycling. The Defense Department recently announced it would be giving domestic law enforcement folks hulking vehicles designed to efficiently maneuver in war zones for use in thwarting any potential high-scale activity. This did not sit well with those who see a troubling trend in the militarization of local police departments, including the American Civil Liberties Union, which has criticized the Defense Department for giving an 18-ton, $500,000 armor-protected military fighting vehicle to local forces. ACLU affiliates have been collecting 2012 records to determine the extent of the military hardware and tactics sent to police and plan to issue a report early next year. One of our concerns is that this has a tendency to escalate to violence, ACLU Center for Justice Kara Dansky said. An Associated Press investigation of the Defense Department military surplus program this year found that a disproportionate share of the $4.2 billion worth of property distributed since 1990, everything from blankets to bayonets to Humvees, has been obtained by police and sheriff departments in rural areas with few officers and little crime. And the article goes on talking about the book from Radley Blacko, The Rise of the Warrior.
Yep. Got it right here, as a matter of fact, right here on my desk. I look at it and, in fact, reference it frequently. But
what he says here is interesting. He says, instead of bringing soldiers into a domestic law enforcement situation, we have allowed and even encouraged police officers to become armed like, police-like, use the tactics of, and be dressed and adapt to the mindsets of these soldiers.
Correct. And see, this is what happened in Dallas with Alex+Jones, in part. This is what happened. This is what's happening all across the country. You're having the federalization, or the acting under the authority of the federal agencies, DHS and FEMA and other, well, DHS and specifically, and more than 18,000 police departments in the United States. We have far more than any other nation. What they're doing is they're providing them with the vehicles, the equipment, the armaments, and also the orders. So that's important. You see, this stuff has strings attached to it. The equipment has strings attached to it. The money has strings attached to it. You will now be centralized under the authority of the federal government. This is exactly what's taking place.
Yes, it is. And we're going to go back to the phones and get your guys' take on this story and any other thing you'd like to talk about. 205-205. We're coming to you now. Thanks for holding. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hi, Doug and Joe.
Good evening.
How are you guys doing?
Well, we're doing just fabulous. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing fine.
You all ready for the big day tomorrow? And by the way, folks, I will be live. I will be live tomorrow night, regular show time, just to keep you company. Let me belly up to your table tomorrow night. But what's on your mind?
Well, I have a few things on my mind. I wanted to talk about the planet Ison. I wanted to know what are you guys' take on that? I mean, do you think it's something that is just going to probably bypass us, or do you think that could be some people say is some evil entities that's coming into our orbit, and some people say that it is, an act of God. And, but the way, I mean, a lot of people are not really, really just talking about it. What do you guys think about it?
Well, it's a great question, and thanks for asking. Me personally, I don't think the Earth or us will see any damages or problems from Ison. It'll put on an excellent show, I believe, but I don't think that means that we're out of the woods as far as things in space that we need to worry about. I think there are other things out there that aren't really disclosed and talked about, and we have the asteroid threat, the meteor showers increasing. But I don't think Ison specifically will pose a problem to us. I do think, and agree with you in a way, it's an omen. I do believe it is an omen, and it is a sign, and something that we need to keep in mind that times are changing, and, this is a very rare event, and things are moving so fast, and there are so many coincidences with other things going on with the blood moons, with so much of the plans written in the Bible that are coming to fruition that it has to be looked at in the time period we're in.
Yes, it does. And that's pretty much, because I had just been looking at it, and they was talking about how it's being pulled back and how it's continuing to get larger and it's gaining speed and it's just so huge or what have you. And I remember they said it was a while, I can't direct the year where it was a comet that hit like that and burnt up animals and part of the world and stuff like that. And so I was just keeping my eye on it because it's just more than Ison. You got Lovejoy and you got Inky and you got a few more of them that's out there. And, some of them are not sun divers and some of them are or what have you. And so that is something to look at. But how they talk about the powers that be are summoning these things in, and how, Steve Quayle was talking about things that's supposed to be coming to the earth or things that have been here already. And I was thinking, do you think that this might be a flight for them to be able to come on up in here? And we might be thinking it's just orbits that's flying in and exploding, and they're landing, and the stuff that's going on at the Vatican with, him in the bones of, you guys heard about that, where he's has the Peter bones and all of that going on. And it's just stuff going on here, and it's going on there, and it's going on here. And I just thought maybe it was probably all coming together as one. And that's just something that we probably need to look into. With them being so tricky and deceitful, you just never know. And, they're not talking about it. And when they don't talk about stuff, it's something to be concerned about.
Well, first of all, I agree. With respect to the comet Ison, and the things you mentioned, of course, you're talking, I think you were referencing this, the Tunguska event, this large explosion that took place in Russia. This happened back in June of 1908, and that's supposedly from the impact of a small asteroid or comet. Now, I don't see that happening. I do think personally that this is an omen. You also mentioned too something very interesting, very interesting indeed. The Vatican has put St. Peter's bones on display for the first time. Pope Francis, the 266th Bishop of Rome, is putting the bone fragments, reportedly of St. Peter, the Apostle, and the first Bishop of Rome on display. And earlier last week he had cradled the relics during this Mass at St. Peter's Square. And it's the first time ever the Catholic Church has displayed the relics in public. Now, man, I don't know what's going on here. And folks, and ma'am, you can help me out. I just don't know what's going on, except this is a question I would likely ask Tom Horn. Exactly, what's the significance of this? Because you're looking at this Jesuit-controlled Vatican. So there's something not right here, and I think we're seeing perhaps something getting ready to take place.
And that's what they said, because they said from what I understood was these bones are supposed to be displayed, but from my understanding, he's supposed to be getting some kind of powers from these bones, or some kind of where they're praying to these bones, where to the fact that they think, because they said the bones have not been proven to be Peter's bones. They said that's on record, they're not Peter's bones, but it's some kind of evil entity that, of course, they're not going to say anything about it, but you read about it and you think about it, if that is the case, that could be some evil spirit that they're getting ready for, that NASA is not talking about, nobody is talking about, and for this to be so big, because this stuff they say is like 3 times as big as Earth. So that's something to look at, and then they're out there in space looking at this stuff, but do they say anything national? It's like they're ready for something to come, and then with Obama and them building these underground tunnels, and he can't go to his meetings in certain places because he has to go to these underground tunnels, and they have to make sure all this stuff is in place. It's something big about to happen. And so it all comes together, and they're all in it together, but it's just, I just wanted to throw that out there because it's just a lot going on, and so absolutely, I look at this, and I look at, and so you can't take everything. You can't take everything and just blow it up. But most of the time, you look at stuff and you do your own research on stuff, and it be very well there. And as long as your eyes are open, you see what's going on. You just have to do your research and stay put on top.
Absolutely, ma'am. And I want to thank you so much for your call. I do want to comment. God bless you, ma'am, and hopefully you can join us for Thanksgiving tomorrow. I want to comment on the bones, by the way, just a little bit, the backstory, which the caller was referring to. I'm losing my voice here.
Yeah, what are you doing?
I don't know. Here's the backstory with the bones. They're picture like a shoebox, but a very ornate shoebox. And inside the shoebox are 8 pieces of bone. 8 pieces of bone. Now, none of the popes have ever said absolutely that the bones are the remains of St. Peter, which I find rather intriguing. But in 1968, Pope Paul VI said that the bones that were found, they were found underneath St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican, but they had been identified in a way that they considered extremely convincing. What was that way? Well, according to a couple of books and a couple of reports, one of the books is called The Ear of the Vatican. It was published last year, I think it was, or 2012. According to this book, the relics were discovered in 1939 as archaeologists were excavating the grottos of St. Peter's Basilica to bury Pope Pius XI. Now, what they found was a casket type of container with the engraving in Greek that read, "Peter is here." Now, the scholar of Greek antiquities who had deciphered the engraving continued to investigate and learned that one of the basilica workers had given the remains found inside the casket and stored them in a shoebox, hence the size of the container, in the cupboard. She reported her findings to Pope Paul VI, who later proclaimed that there was a convincing argument that the bones belonged to Peter. And leading Vatican Jesuits and other archaeologists strongly denied the claim, but had little recourse. And it's an extremely interesting, very interesting tale indeed. But no pope, by the way, has permitted to date any exhaustive study, partly because of the 1,000. Well, this is from the book published last year, but no pope had ever permitted an exhaustive study, partly because a 1,000-year-old curse attested by secret and apocalyptic documents threatened anyone who disturbed the peace of St. Peter's tomb or Peter's tomb with the worst possible misfortune. Now think about that, and think about the Jesuit-controlled Vatican, what they're doing with these remains, not only disturbing them but putting them on display. What's going on? What's going on?
I don't know. We're told not to, not honor the dead in Scripture. The dead are gone. The bodies, important of the bodies were gone at death. I watched an interesting YouTube video yesterday about what's underneath in the Vatican and how the Vatican rooms are labeled with letters and what's displayed in each letter and what it's dedicated to. And it was kind of, I don't know how true it was. It didn't seem out of place the way that it was presented, but it kind of makes you wonder. And, I have stories on the Pope. The Pope issued a report, basically. But we're going to save that for another time. We're going to go back to some callers here.
That's a good idea. Let's go back to the phones.
410, you're up next. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. 410.
Hey, are we being punked, or is there a problem with our phone lines?
I don't know. We're going to try it.
Did you pay the bill? Did you pay the bill this month?
Oh, no. 819, you're live on the air. We're coming to you now.
Hi.
Hi.
Yes, hello. Hi, my name is Gloria, and I'm calling from Quebec, Canada.
Well, hi.
Gloria, can you hear me? Yes, okay.
Quebec, I can hear you loud and clear. I think there's a small delay, but we'll work through it.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, thank you for your show. I'm new to the show. I've been listening for a couple of months now. And I would like to say, I don't know if anybody heard about, there was a meteor that hit ground yesterday near Ottawa, Ontario.
No.
Yeah, last night around 8 o'clock. It was on the news last night. And a lot of people heard a really big boom and everything. And even, I think one of the pilots from Air Canada saw like a blue tail. It was all over the news tonight anyway. It happened around 8 o'clock last night.
I'm looking here.
Here it is right here. Exactly. Bright flash of blue light reported in Ottawa and other regions of Montreal. Did you happen to see it? Well, no, of course.
Well, I didn't see it, but there was a big boom that was heard even into the States, and my sister lives in Ottawa. And it was really, really loud over there. A lot of people, because it was snowing, and we had a major storm last night, so a lot of people didn't see the blue light, but they heard the boom. It was really, really loud.
Wow.
And see, this isn't being reported on one of the Earth monitoring sites that tell you about volcanoes and events from space. That's not on the website, but I did pull up an article from the Huffington Post talking about.
Exactly. That's what I'm looking at as well. Yes. Wow. So you're imagine that. Imagine seeing that, the snow and the darkness, and then all of a sudden this blue flash, and of course, wow.
It was a big sonic sound. Yeah, it was heard even into the States. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that.
Wow, what do you think's going on? I mean, seriously, because I saw a report earlier today. Ma'am, I don't know if you saw this or not, but supposedly some young boy was hit in the head by pieces of meteorite.
I saw it.
Or pieces of meteor. I mean, what's going on here?
I don't know. It has anything to do with ice on or anything, but anyway, it's on the way. I gave birth during a solar flare back in '89 during the Quebec blackout. I was giving birth that night.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I have a lot. Yeah, I know. It was wow.
Did you give birth in the dark, or was there power?
Yeah, there was no electricity. The power was out at the hospital and everything, and I needed an emergency cesarean, and they were looking through. Everything was down. Everything was totally down. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that. Yeah.
Wow.
And there's another little thing I wanted to mention about the Mayan. I know I'm just like going from one thing to another. I have so many things to talk about, but the Mayan calendar. I was studying the Nephilim back in the 70s, and also the Mayan calendar, the pyramids, and my path is a lot like Augusto Perez, like you were talking about the last show you had with Augusto.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, everything he describes is exactly the same for me. Everything he talked about on that show, everything is exactly the same for me. The visions, the pyramids, the Nephilim I've been studying back in the 70s. And I was like awestruck when I listened to him. I said, there's another person on this planet that sees everything like me. So I just wanted maybe to share that. And about the Mayan calendar, I've been studying that for a long time. And there's one thing that a lot of people didn't know about, and everybody was looking for the end on the 21st of December. Well, they didn't look at the 13th back tune. Like, everything's divided with 20-day months. And these 20-day months, they go into Tekkuns, and then you've got the different cycles, and it ended with the 13th back tune. And that back tune had a serpent. Everything has to do with the serpent. And out of the serpent's mouth was coming water. And that signification meant that this cycle was going to be starting, the new cycle. Well, one was ending. All the different cycles were ending, and a new one is starting with floods and massive precipitation. And that's what we've been seeing since last December. It started a couple of weeks after, and I've been looking at it ever since. And I was telling everybody there's no end of the world. What's happening is there's a new cycle starting, but with this new cycle, there's going to be catastrophes, but especially floods, major floods around the world, and major precipitations, and that's what we're seeing throughout the states, major storms, like in the Philippines, all the floods all over the place. So I just wanted to bring that out.
Caller, let me ask you a question. If memory serves me correctly, wasn't the Mayan calendar built on a 5,125-year cycle, I think it is, or 5,000 and change cycle?
You're really losing your voice.
Yes.
Yeah, I am. Okay.
Yes, exactly. But within those cycles, because all the cycles go through 20-day months. Then you got the Tekkuns, and then you've got the Baktuns, and then you've got the 5,100, and that's another cycle which goes into another 27,000 years, which goes with the constellations. Like, we're going from Pisces to Aquarius. So that's what they call the year, the age of Aquarius. So that is every. I'm just like summing it up there. 27,000 years. I'm not being precise there. I'm just to the listeners, and that's what we're going into, and that's what we're calling the age of Aquarius. But all these cycles are starting over again. Okay. So we're going into another 27,000 years. We're going into another 5,000, and all these cycles are starting over. And it ended with the 13th Vectun, which is the serpent, and the water coming out of the serpent's mouth. And those are on the different calendars you see. They've got all the different Vectuns, and a lot of people didn't talk about that. They were just talking about the end of that cycle, which would bring catastrophes, and it does. But what kind of catastrophes it brings? It starts with major floodings around the world. Interesting. Okay. And this sounds a little bit like New Age kind of sort of things, when in fact it's my belief, and I don't know what your belief system is, but it's my belief that the Illuminati, the Luciferians, they kind of get involved in this celestial type of they look at this kind of stuff and they plan around it. Mm-hmm. Oh, sure, they sure do. They sure do. No, I'm a believer. I'm a born again believer, but I study all these things in conjunction with the Bible, because the Lord has always been bringing me, like, between science and between everything around me, the Nephilim, the Watchers, and everything, with the Word. Just like a little bit like Augusto was explaining. Exactly. Okay. And even Maitreya, when he talked about Maitreya, I even have those. I have the same newspaper clips that he has, 1982, Maitreya. Well, do you know, are you familiar with Kathleen Keating? Because Kathleen Keating was on with Art Bell a couple of times back in the 1990s talking about Maitreya, and I remember being on the radio with her. This is probably 10 years ago, talking about this, and she was
she was convinced that there was obviously something very, very wrong with this Maitreya in terms of these, supposed appearances and you name it. So, very weird things, I'll tell you. But I remember. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
Yeah, because they even had, we had even here in Quebec, we had it in our newspaper in 1982 that he would be appearing on TV around the world. And I know Augusta was looking like for the whole year to see if he would appear, but we had a special message that was sent out here in Quebec saying that Maitreya sent out a message that we weren't ready yet. People around the world were not ready to receive him yet, so it was put off for a later date.
Interesting.
And that
wow.
That was back in 1982.
Wow. So yeah, it sounds like you've got the same newspaper clippings. You've got walked the same in a similar walk with Augusto. Very interesting. Yeah, so from the meteor impact, or from the meteor last night in Quebec to, my goodness, to Maitreya, covered a lot of ground there. But my goodness, wow, we really appreciate you listening from Quebec, and certainly join me tomorrow night. I'll be here, and I'll offer you a virtual slice of pumpkin pie.
Yeah,
thank you so much. Love it.
All right.
God bless you.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
God bless you.
We're going to try and fit one more caller in here. 860, we're coming to you. We got about 8 minutes left in the show. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Thank you very much. First of all, just thank you so much for what you guys are doing. You're doing great. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, and thank you.
Well, thank you. Glad you're listening. And anything specific on your mind tonight other than what you just shared?
Sir, if I could just a few Bible verses very quickly, I may be able to squeeze them in. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Timothy 1:7. For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Just going to run through them. Isaiah 41:10. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Luke 10:19. Okay. I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions and to overcome all the power of the enemy. Nothing will harm you. All this is in regards to the power of prayer and faith versus fear. And in closing, Matthew 7:7. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be open to you.
And that is so true. And sadly, not to be negative, but we see a people today who don't seek, who like to really be told, what, how things are, instead of reading the Word for themselves. And it's very sad. But yes, I agree. You keep reading in the Word, and you seek, and the Lord will show things to you.
Sorry, sir, I'm monopolizing your time, but if I could just read one more verse quickly.
Absolutely. Go ahead. Yeah, sir, you can go ahead and do that. I don't know if we're cutting out or not, but yeah, go ahead.
Sure. John 14:12. Truly, truly, I say to you, whoever believes in me will also do the works that I do, and greater works than these will he do, because I'm going to the Father. You have the authority to request in his name. You can demand. You can force this to happen, to restore righteousness. That's all I called to tell you. Tonight, you're doing great. Thank you. God bless you, and happy Thanksgiving.
And happy Thanksgiving to you,
yes.
And God bless you as well. And thank you for sharing those inspirational Bible verses with us.
Absolutely.
Very timely.
I just want to point listeners, folks, in case you don't know, we've had Dave Hodges on our program. And we've had Dave Hodges on a number of times. He has a show called The Common Sense Show. His latest article published, I think it was today. Why are the bankers and ex-Intel types running for their lives. And in that article, you've got to read it. You've got to read it, folks. In that article, he references some of the sources, independent collaboration of which, of course, were listed in here, and in other insider sources. And I've got to tell you, he puts together a really compelling, convincing picture of what's about to take place from what's coming: false flags, gun confiscation, internment of undesirables, and what the ex-Intel officials fear most, of course.
And the internment of the undesirables has already happened, with the homeless being taken to camps across different cities and states as laws are being passed that say you cannot be homeless. It's not legal anymore.
Exactly. And, yeah, exactly. So it's incredible. But I would urge that link, by the way, for Dave Hodges is the commonsenseshow.com, thecommonsenseshow.com. And that article is Why Are They Running for Their Lives? And definitely, why are the bankers and ex-Intel types running for their lives? And folks, if you didn't catch my little funny business there, in preparation for Thanksgiving, my wife was baking. She was baking some pies. She baked an oven mitt. Long story short, fire, smoke, mayhem, chaos. So if you want to ask for her oven mitt recipe, you have until I take the email address down. If you go